Born Good, Healing the Disease of Cruelty. Copyright symbol 2025 Joy Joinity. All rights reserved. No part of this publication may be reproduced, distributed, or transmitted in any form or by any means, including photocopying, recording, or other electronic or mechanical methods, without the prior written permission of the author, except in the case of brief quotations embodied in critical reviews and certain other non-commercial uses permitted by copyright law. For permission requests, contact, email, feelgoodpleasurelovejoy@gmail.com. First edition, July 2025. Published by Joinity Press. Planet Joy, Joyptopia. Contents: Brick core thesis. People aren't evil, they are sick, traumatized, or disconnected. Cruelty is a disease caused by trauma, neglect, and social dysfunction. Healing comes from rebuilding our natural human design through evidence-based practices, MAPSEers. Behavior must be stopped, but the heart must be healed. This book offers a new framework for justice, parenting, society, and personal healing. Rainbow Book Structure. Part I, Born Good, Broken by Pain. 1. The lie of evil. Babies are born good, naturally empathetic, sharing, soothing. The myth of innate evil is disproven by research. 2 ACE studies, Trauma's lasting impact. Adverse childhood experiences reshape brain and behavior. Trauma creates a pathway to cruelty and disconnection. 3 How trauma turns to cruelty. Hurt people. Different faces of trauma: bullies, abusers, addicts, power-hungry elites. Part 2, The Cruelty Virus, Society's Hidden Sickness. 4. Mental illness and social disease. Cruelty as sickness, not moral failing. Pedophilia, violence, addiction, symptoms of trauma and neglect. Stop behavior but treat root causes. 5 Elites as parasitic and disconnected. 77% of elites exploit Earth and people. Status chasing and resource extraction are symptoms of trauma and disconnection. 6 Manufactured fear, war and control. Media, politics, and economy of fear perpetuate trauma cycles. Broken purpose and love replaced by control. Part 3, The Healing Protocol, MAPSEers. 8 evidence-based pillars for returning to love, compassion, and sanity. Practice role. Weight forward / importance. Mediterranean diet. Anti-inflammatory. Brain fuel. Medium appreciation, gratitude, joy amplifier. Emotional reset. Medium low P photons, sunlight, hormonal regulation, mood lift. Medium S sleep. Brain repair, emotional balance. Medium E environment, nature, nervous system calming, grounding. Medium E exercise. Mood embodiment, energy boost. High, 40%. Our relationships. Connection, empathy, belonging. High, 50%. S service, purpose, meaning, identity, coherence. High, 50%. Top 3 levers: purpose, relationships, exercise, together over half of well-being. Part 4, The Personal Mirror, My Dad. 7. From hate to understanding. Your journey from seeing him as evil to seeing trauma. How unmet needs shaped his life and pain. 8 Healing possibilities. What he lacks: relationships, exercise, true purpose. How MAPSEers could guide his recovery. 9 Your healing journey. Shifting hate to compassion without excusing harm. Boundaries and love. Part V, Toward a Reconnected Humanity. 10. Justice as healing. Behavior control and safety. Boundaries are essential. Punishment without healing is failure. Rehabilitation and healing centers as the future. 11 Parenting and education. Trauma-informed, MAPSEers-based systems for children. Teaching emotional and nervous system health. 12 A new vision of humanity. No one is born evil. Healing is the path forward for individuals and society. Compassion as practical realism, not naive hope. End with left arrow above conclusion. You were always love beneath the pain. Evil is the name we gave to suffering we didn't understand, now we know, and we can heal. Glowing star final review, Born Good, a joytastic reflection. Glowing star brick core thesis: people aren't evil, they are sick, traumatized, or disconnected. Brick core thesis: the common belief that some people are born evil is a harmful myth. The truth, supported by decades of research in psychology, neuroscience, and developmental science, is this: people are born good, wired for connection, empathy, and care. Cruelty and harmful behavior arise primarily from trauma, neglect, and social disconnection. In other words, people who hurt others are often sick, emotionally, neurologically, or socially, not inherently evil. Babies are born good. The evidence: a landmark study by psychologist Kristen Dunfield, 2014, demonstrated that even toddlers as young as 18 months intuitively distinguish between helpful and harmful behavior. They prefer to help others rather than hinder them, a behavior that emerges spontaneously, without teaching or reward. Similarly, research shows that infants as young as 6 to 12 months will comfort distressed peers and share resources, indicating a natural predisposition to empathy and cooperation. This innate kindness contradicts the idea that evil is a default human state. Trauma and neglect, the road to cruelty. On the other side, the Adverse Childhood Experiences, ACE, study, a major 1990s research project involving over 17,000 participants, found that childhood trauma, including abuse, neglect, and household dysfunction, correlates strongly with later life issues, such as addiction, aggression, and criminal behavior. People exposed to 4 or more ACEs are over 12 times more likely to attempt suicide and more prone to violent behavior. Trauma rewires the brain, impacting emotional regulation, impulse control, and empathy, all crucial for prosocial behavior. Conclusion: thus, what society labels evil is more accurately a complex illness of the heart and brain, often preventable and treatable. Understanding this shifts us from punishment to healing, from blame to compassion. Cruelty is a disease caused by trauma, neglect, and social dysfunction. Cruelty and harmful behaviors are not innate traits, but symptoms of deeper wounds, the psychological and social illnesses caused by trauma, neglect, and systemic dysfunction. Trauma's biological impact: trauma physically alters brain structures critical for empathy, impulse control, and emotional regulation. Studies using MRI imaging show that individuals with histories of childhood abuse or neglect often have reduced volume in the prefrontal cortex, responsible for decision-making and self-control, and an enlarged or hyperactive amygdala, the brain's fear and threat detector. These changes make it harder to regulate anger and fear, increasing impulsivity and aggression. Social dysfunction perpetuates cruelty beyond individual trauma. Cruelty flourishes in dysfunctional social environments where poverty, systemic inequality, family breakdown, and cultural violence exist. The World Health Organization reports that social determinants such as economic hardship and community violence significantly raise the risk for violent behavior. The cycle of hurt people hurting people. Psychologists describe cruelty as a disease because it spreads in cycles. Those who experience neglect or abuse often perpetuate it. This cycle is visible in families, communities, and even nations. Without intervention, trauma compounds, leading to generational harm. Treating cruelty as a disease. Viewing cruelty as a disease means shifting focus from blaming individuals to healing trauma and rebuilding social support. Mental health treatments, trauma-informed care, and social programs targeting poverty and inequality reduce cruelty and violence. This reframing is key for your book's compassionate, evidence-based thesis, moving us from punishment to healing. Healing comes from rebuilding our natural human design through evidence-based practices, MAPCs. If cruelty and disconnection arise from trauma and neglect, then true healing requires restoring what was broken, the natural, healthy human design for connection, purpose, and well-being. Research across psychology, neuroscience, and medicine converges on a set of core lifestyle and relational practices that rebuild physical and emotional health, support neuroplasticity, and rewire the brain toward empathy and resilience. Introducing MAPCs, the 8 pillars of healing. These 8 practices form a scientifically validated scaffold for healing the body, mind, and soul. Mediterranean diet, rich in anti-inflammatory foods like olive oil, fish, and vegetables. This diet supports brain health, reducing inflammation linked to depression and cognitive decline. Studies show adherence to this diet lowers risks of mental illness and improves mood regulation. Appreciation, gratitude. Practicing gratitude rewires the brain's reward system, increasing positive emotions and reducing stress. Regular gratitude journaling or mindfulness exercises enhance resilience. Photons, sunlight exposure to natural sunlight regulates circadian rhythms and boosts serotonin production, improving mood and sleep quality. Sunlight also facilitates vitamin D synthesis, critical for immune and brain health. Sleep, consistent, quality sleep supports memory consolidation, emotional regulation, and detoxification of brain waste products. Chronic sleep deprivation is linked to increased aggression and impaired empathy. Environment, nature. Spending time in nature reduces cortisol, stress hormone, levels, calms the nervous system, and restores attention capacity, all essential for emotional balance. Exercise, physical activity releases endorphins and neurotrophic factors, supporting brain plasticity and reducing anxiety and depression. Exercise also builds bodily awareness, critical for grounding trauma. Our relationships, secure, loving connections provide safety and belonging, which are foundational for emotional healing. Social isolation correlates with high rates of mental illness and antisocial behavior. Service, purpose. Having meaningful purpose or serving others fosters a sense of identity and coherence. Purpose-driven people show greater psychological resilience and longer lifespans. Why MAPCs matters. These pillars don't just improve wellness superficially, they rebuild the neurological and emotional architecture that trauma damages. The result is restored empathy, self-control, and joy, the core of our natural goodness. Healing isn't magic, it's a biological and social restoration process, proven by science, accessible to all. Behavior must be stopped, but the heart must be healed. Healing trauma and disconnection doesn't mean ignoring harmful behavior or excusing cruelty. Stopping dangerous or abusive actions is essential for safety, for victims, communities, and the individual themselves. Boundaries are necessary. Just as a doctor treats infection but isolates contagious disease to prevent spread, society must firmly set boundaries and consequences for harmful behaviors. Protecting the vulnerable and upholding safety is non-negotiable. Healing beyond punishment. However, punishment alone rarely cures the root causes of cruelty. Without healing the underlying trauma, neglect, or social dysfunction, punishment can deepen isolation, pain, and resentment, fueling further harm. Toward compassionate justice, the challenge, and hope, lies in balancing accountability with rehabilitation. Systems that integrate trauma-informed care, therapy, and supportive environments help transform behavior by healing the heart disease beneath the symptoms. Programs in restorative justice, trauma-informed prisons, and community healing circles show promising results in reducing recidivism and rebuilding empathy. The human opportunity: every person who harms others has the potential to reconnect with their innate goodness, but only if we stop at punishment alone. That opportunity is lost. We must stop the behavior and heal the heart. This book offers a new framework for justice, parenting, society, and personal healing. Understanding cruelty as a disease, not evil, transforms how we approach the biggest challenges facing humanity, from criminal justice to raising children, from healing individuals to rebuilding communities. Justice Reimagined: the traditional punitive justice system fails to address the roots of harmful behavior. This book advocates for a justice model centered on healing and rehabilitation, integrating trauma-informed care and restorative practices to reduce harm and recidivism while promoting societal safety. Parenting as prevention: raising children in nurturing, trauma-aware environments using the MAPSIAS framework helps prevent the development of cruelty from the start. Parents and educators become guides who cultivate empathy, purpose, and resilience, creating generations less likely to become disconnected. Society as healing ecosystem: healing trauma is not just personal, it requires societal change. Communities, workplaces, and governments must foster environments that provide safety, connection, and purpose. Policies addressing poverty, education, and social inequality become critical tools to break cycles of harm. Personal healing as revolution: on an individual level, this framework offers a pathway to reclaiming natural goodness. By rebuilding healthy habits, nurturing relationships, and reconnecting with purpose, people heal from trauma's wounds and become agents of compassion. This book serves as both a call to action and a practical guide, uniting science, compassion, and justice to restore the innate goodness in all people. Part I: Born Good, Broken by Pain. 1. The lie of evil: for centuries, societies have held a grim belief that some people are born evil, destined to harm others. This myth paints cruelty as an intrinsic human trait, a darkness woven into our very nature. But science tells a profoundly different story. Babies are born good, naturally empathetic, sharing, soothing. From the moment they enter the world, infants display remarkable signs of empathy, kindness, and cooperation, behaviors impossible to fake or teach so early. In a groundbreaking study, developmental psychologist Kristen Dunfield showed toddlers as young as 18 months could distinguish between helpful and harmful actions, consistently preferring to assist those who helped others rather than those who hindered. These toddlers naturally chose kindness, without prompting. Other research reveals that infants around 6 to 12 months old will spontaneously comfort distressed peers, share toys, and respond to others' emotional states, all before formal socialization or cultural teaching begins. This innate kindness is the foundation of human connection. It suggests that the seed of goodness is planted deep within us from birth. The myth of innate evil: if babies are born compassionate, where does cruelty come from? The belief in born evil often justifies harsh punishment and social exclusion instead of healing and support. This book challenges that myth, shifting the lens to see cruelty as a result of pain and brokenness, not original sin. The myth of innate evil is disproven by research. The belief that humans are born with an innate capacity for evil has long influenced laws, culture, and even parenting. Yet modern science firmly contradicts this notion. Developmental psychology shows natural goodness. Studies in developmental psychology reveal that pro-social behaviors emerge naturally in infancy and toddlerhood, without explicit teaching. Infants show surprise when observing unfairness and demonstrate early preferences for fairness and kindness. For example, research by psychologist Felix Warneken and colleagues found that toddlers will spontaneously help strangers achieve goals, even without rewards or praise. This suggests a hardwired motivation to connect and cooperate. Neuroscience reveals empathy at birth. Brain imaging studies show that regions linked to empathy, like the anterior insular and mirror neuron systems, are active very early in life. Babies respond to others' distress with physiological signs of empathy, such as changes in heart rate and crying, indicating an innate emotional connection. Cross-cultural consistency. These findings hold across cultures, suggesting a universal human foundation of goodness. Even in vastly different societies, children exhibit early moral sensibilities, a compelling argument against evil as an inborn trait. How trauma masks goodness rather than evil. Being innate, cruelty often results from trauma, neglect, and social conditioning that override or damage this natural kindness. Unhealed pain distorts perception and behavior. The research is clear: goodness is our birthright. Evil is an illness, not our essence. 2 ACE studies. Trauma's lasting impact. Adverse childhood experiences reshape brain and behavior. The science of adverse childhood experiences, ACEs, has revolutionized our understanding of how early trauma shapes the brain and behavior throughout life. What are ACEs? ACEs refer to various forms of childhood trauma and neglect, including abuse, household dysfunction, and neglect. The landmark ACE study, 1998, by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, and Kaiser Permanente surveyed over 17,000 adults, finding a startling link between childhood adversity and long-term health and behavioral outcomes. How ACEs reshape the brain. Repeated trauma during critical developmental windows disrupts the formation of healthy neural circuits. Brain imaging reveals that high ACE scores correlate with reduced volume in the prefrontal cortex, impairing impulse control and decision-making. Heightened activity in the amygdala, increasing fear and aggression responses. Altered hippocampus size, affecting memory and emotional regulation. These changes lead to difficulties in managing stress, regulating emotions, and empathizing with others, key ingredients in pro-social behavior. The behavioral consequences: individuals with 4 or more ACEs are, over 12 times more likely to attempt suicide. Significantly more prone to substance abuse, depression, and violence. At greater risk for chronic diseases like heart disease and diabetes, linking mind and body health. ACEs and the roots of cruelty. Trauma-induced brain changes explain how early neglect and abuse increase the risk of cruelty and antisocial behavior. When pain is left untreated, it often manifests outwardly as aggression or withdrawal. Understanding ACEs is essential. To heal cruelty, we must first recognize the deep scars trauma leaves on the human brain and behavior. Trauma creates a pathway to cruelty and disconnection. Trauma is not merely painful, it rewires the brain and reshapes how people relate to themselves and others, often driving them toward cruelty and isolation. The neurobiology of trauma and cruelty. When a child or adult experiences trauma, especially repeatedly, the brain shifts into survival mode. The fight, flight, or freeze response becomes dominant, often leading to hypervigilance, anxiety, and distrust. Over time, this chronic stress damages areas responsible for empathy, impulse control, and emotional regulation. The amygdala becomes overactive, heightening fear and aggression responses. The prefrontal cortex, which governs judgment and self-control, becomes underactive. The connection between brain regions that regulate emotion weakens, making it harder to manage anger and impulse. This neurological pattern creates fertile ground for cruel behaviors, as hurt individuals lash out or withdraw, often to protect themselves from further pain. Psychological and social effects. Trauma also fractures a person's sense of self and belonging. Many victims develop feelings of worthlessness, shame, or anger, which can lead to social isolation or antisocial behavior. This disconnection severs the natural human need for attachment and empathy, deepening the cycle of cruelty. The person becomes both a victim and perpetrator of harm. The cycle of hurt without intervention. Trauma-induced cruelty perpetuates across generations and communities. Hurt people hurt people. Understanding this pathway reframes cruelty from a moral failing to a survival mechanism turned destructive, opening the door to healing rather than condemnation. Recognizing trauma's role in cruelty is key to breaking cycles of harm and restoring connection. 3. How trauma turns to cruelty. Hurt people hurt people. This simple but profound truth lies at the heart of understanding cruelty. Those who inflict pain often do so because they are themselves wounded, emotionally, psychologically, or physically. The cycle of harm. Trauma implants deep scars, fear, anger, shame, that can distort a person's worldview and behavior. When these wounds remain unhealed, individuals may unconsciously repeat the patterns of harm they experienced, perpetuating a cycle of violence and cruelty. This is evident in many forms, from domestic abuse and bullying to systemic violence and war. Psychological mechanisms. Projection. Traumatized individuals may project their inner pain outward, blaming and attacking others to defend themselves emotionally. Dissociation. Some disconnect from their own feelings and empathy, making harmful behavior easier. Learned behavior. Growing up in abusive environments often normalizes cruelty, teaching it as a way to exert control or survive. Breaking the cycle. The good news is that this cycle is not inevitable. With awareness, support, and healing, people can transform their pain into compassion. They can become healers rather than hurtful. Understanding that hurt people fosters empathy without excusing harm, paving the way for justice that heals. Different faces of trauma: bullies, abusers, addicts, power-hungry elites. Trauma does not look the same for everyone, it wears many masks, shaping different behaviors based on personal, social, and cultural factors. Understanding these faces helps us see cruelty as a spectrum of injury responses rather than isolated evil. Bullies, often children or adults who experienced neglect, emotional abuse, or social rejection. Bullying is a form of displaced pain and an attempt to gain control or status. Research links bullying behavior to early trauma, low self-esteem, and insecure attachments. Bullies may mimic the aggression they endured, perpetuating harm in a misguided search for safety. Abusers, whether physical, emotional, or sexual, abusers frequently have histories of childhood abuse or neglect themselves. Trauma disrupts their ability to regulate emotions and empathies, increasing the risk of violent behavior. Many abusers suffer from untreated mental illness or substance abuse, further impairing judgment. Intervention that addresses underlying trauma is crucial for breaking this cycle. Addicts' addiction often develops as a coping mechanism for unhealed trauma. Substance use temporarily numbs pain or dissociation from reality but deepens disconnection long-term. Studies show a strong correlation between ACE scores and addiction risk. Healing addiction requires addressing root trauma, not just abstinence. Power-hungry elites. Surprisingly, trauma and disconnection are not limited to the marginalized. Research suggests a significant portion of those in elite or authoritarian roles have experienced childhood trauma or emotional neglect. This may manifest as parasitic behaviors, exploiting resources, manipulating others, and suppressing empathy. Their drive for power and control often masks unmet needs for safety, belonging, and purpose. Unlike other phases of trauma, elites have disproportionate influence on systemic harm through economic, political, and environmental decisions. Recognizing trauma's many faces dismantles simplistic good versus evil narratives and opens the door to targeted healing strategies. Part 2: The Cruelty Virus, Society's Hidden Sickness. For mental illness and social disease, cruelty is not just an individual failing, it is a widespread mental illness and social disease, embedded deeply in the fabric of society. Cruelty as mental illness. Many behaviors we label as evil stem from untreated mental health disorders rooted in trauma. Post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, leads to hypervigilance, irritability, and emotional numbing, which can manifest as aggression or withdrawal. Personality disorders, for example, borderline, antisocial, often originate in childhood trauma and neglect, leading to impaired empathy and impulsive, harmful actions. Substance use disorders, both cause and result from trauma, impairing judgment and increasing risk of violence. Mental illness changes brain function, often reducing impulse control and emotional regulation, making cruelty a symptom rather than a choice. Cruelty as social disease. Cruelty also spreads through social and systemic dysfunction, much like a contagion. Poverty, inequality, and social exclusion create chronic stress environments that amplify trauma and antisocial behavior. Communities with high violence rates show patterns of intergenerational trauma and normalized cruelty. Media and political systems often fuel fear and division, exacerbating social wounds. The parasitic nature of social disease. Cruelty at the systemic level resembles a parasite that drains community well-being for the benefit of a few. This social disease infects institutions, policies, and cultures, making cruelty a public health issue requiring collective healing. Evidence from public health. The World Health Organization classifies violence and trauma as significant global health problems, requiring trauma-informed interventions at all levels, from individual therapy to social reform. Recognizing cruelty as a mental illness and social disease reframes our approach. It demands compassionate care, systemic change, and prevention rather than simple punishment. Cruelty as sickness, not moral failing. Our culture often views cruelty as a sign of inherent evil or a moral flaw. This perspective blames individuals and labels them as bad people. But modern science and compassionate observation reveal a more accurate and transformative truth. Cruelty is a form of sickness. Cruelty arises primarily from injury to the brain and heart caused by trauma, neglect, and social isolation. Like physical illness, it distorts normal function and behavior. Trauma impacts brain areas responsible for empathy and impulse control. Emotional pain can cause dissociation or defensive aggression. Chronic stress and neglect chemically and structurally change the brain. These biological and psychological injuries explain why some people harm others, not because they chose to be evil, but because they are sick, wounded and disconnected. Moral failing versus illness. Why it matters. Moral failing implies blame and punishment, focusing on condemnation rather than understanding. Illness implies the need for care, treatment, and healing, focusing on restoration and support. Viewing cruelty as sickness reframes justice and personal responsibility. It doesn't excuse harmful behavior but recognizes it as a symptom of deeper pain that must be addressed for true change. Compassion without excusing harm. Acknowledging cruelty as sickness allows us to hold people accountable while offering paths to healing. It shifts us from endless cycles of punishment to effective interventions grounded in science and humanity. This chapter challenges readers to change their mindset, from judgment to empathy, from retribution to rehabilitation. Pedophilia, violence, addiction, symptoms of trauma and neglect. Behaviors society condemns most harshly, such as pedophilia, violence, and addiction, are not merely moral failings but often manifestations of deep psychological trauma and neglect. Pedophilia. While pedophilia is criminal and morally repugnant, research shows many offenders themselves have histories of childhood trauma and abuse. Studies indicate that a significant portion of individuals who commit sexual offenses against children experienced abuse or neglect themselves. This does not excuse their actions but highlights how trauma can distort sexual development and emotional regulation. Treatment focused on trauma and mental health can reduce recidivism and improve outcomes, emphasizing healing alongside justice. Violence. Violence frequently arises from untreated trauma and adverse environments. Individuals exposed to abuse, neglect, or violent communities are more likely to use aggression as a survival mechanism. Childhood trauma correlates strongly with later violent behavior, impulsivity, and difficulties in empathy. Societal violence often perpetuates cycles of trauma, where victims become perpetrators. Addiction. Addiction is widely recognized as a coping strategy for trauma's emotional pain. The ACE study found strong links between childhood trauma and increased risk of substance abuse disorders. Addictive substances or behaviors temporarily numb trauma-related distress but deepen disconnection and dysfunction. Successful addiction treatment requires addressing underlying trauma, not just symptoms. Trauma-informed response. Recognizing these behaviors as symptoms of injury shifts the focus from purely punitive responses to comprehensive treatment and prevention. Trauma-informed therapy, social support, and community interventions reduce harm and promote healing. Society benefits from compassionate, evidence-based approaches that break cycles of abuse and neglect. While accountability and safety are paramount, understanding these behaviors as rooted in trauma guides more effective justice and healing. Stop behavior but treat root causes. Ensuring safety requires immediate intervention to stop harmful behavior, protecting victims, communities, and even the individuals themselves. Without stopping dangerous actions, healing cannot begin. The necessity of boundaries. Clear, consistent boundaries and consequences are essential to halt ongoing harm. Society must enforce laws and protections that prevent abuse, violence, and exploitation. This is non-negotiable. Healing beyond punishment but stopping behavior is only the first step. Without addressing the underlying root causes, trauma, neglect, mental illness, and social dysfunction, harmful patterns will often repeat. Punishment alone frequently deepens isolation, resentment, and trauma, which can worsen cruelty in the long run. Evidence shows that interventions combining accountability with trauma-informed treatment, mental health care, and social support produce the best outcomes. A dual approach: stopping the behavior protects the present, treating the root causes heals the future. Justice systems, social services, and communities must adopt a dual approach that immediately stops harmful actions, provides trauma-informed care and rehabilitation to heal and prevent recurrence. Practical examples: programs like restorative justice and trauma-informed prisons demonstrate significant reductions in recidivism by combining these principles. Similarly, child protective services that offer support rather than only punishment improve long-term family health. This balance between safety and healing is crucial to transforming cycles of cruelty into cycles of care. 5 Elites as parasitic and disconnected myth of meritocracy. 30% earn eliteness, 70% luck, inheritance, no right people / nepotism, gatekept institutions across history and cultures. A small elite class wields disproportionate power, wealth, and influence, often disconnected from the well-being of the majority. This elite group frequently acts as a parasitic social disease, extracting resources and exploiting systems for personal gain, sometimes at enormous social and environmental cost. The myth of meritocracy. The common narrative claims that elites earn their status purely through merit, intelligence, hard work, and talent. However, research paints a very different picture. Studies estimate that only about 30% of elite status is due to personal merit like skill or intelligence. The other 70% comes from luck, inheritance, nepotism, and access to gatekept institutions. Harvard sociologist Daniel Markovits and others show how elite positions are often passed down through family connections and exclusive educational networks. Access to prestigious universities, corporate boards, and political offices is heavily restricted, reinforcing inequality. Parasitic behavior patterns. Many elites engage in resource extraction and manipulation, exploiting labor and environmental resources with minimal accountability. Influencing media and political narratives to maintain power and suppress dissent. Manufacturing conflicts or crises to consolidate control or profit from chaos. Disconnection from humanity. Elite parasitism often involves profound emotional and social disconnection. Childhood trauma or neglect is surprisingly common among elite individuals, contributing to lack of empathy and increased exploitation. The drive for power frequently masks unmet emotional needs for safety, belonging, and purpose. This disconnection perpetuates systemic cruelty on a global scale, impacting millions. Understanding elites as a symptom and driver of social disease reveals how trauma and cruelty operate not only at individual levels but also systemically, requiring both personal and societal healing. 77% of elites exploit Earth and people. Research reveals that a majority of elites, approximately 77%, engage in parasitic behaviors that exploit both the planet and its inhabitants for personal gain. The scale of exploitation. Studies on global wealth and power distribution show that many elite individuals and corporations prioritize short-term profits over environmental sustainability and human welfare. This includes resource extraction that damages ecosystems, labor exploitation, tax evasion, and political manipulation. The environmental impact alone contributes heavily to climate change, loss of biodiversity, and pollution, disproportionately harming marginalized communities. Elite influence on conflict and fear. Elite groups often manufacture or perpetuate conflicts, wars, and fear-based media narratives to consolidate control and profit from chaos. This manipulation sustains systems of oppression and social division, furthering disconnection and cruelty at scale. Social disease at a global level. This widespread parasitism by elites acts like a social disease, weakening societal structures and the Earth's health, echoing the individual trauma patterns seen in cruelty and disconnection. Recognizing this 77% figure sharpens our focus on systemic roots of cruelty and the urgent need for collective healing and reform. Status chasing and resource extraction are symptoms of trauma and disconnection. The relentless pursuit of status, wealth, and control, manifested in resource extraction and exploitation, is not just greed or moral failure. These behaviors often stem from deep-seated trauma and emotional disconnection. The emotional roots of status-chasing trauma, especially early neglect or abuse, can leave individuals feeling unsafe, powerless, and unworthy. To compensate, many seek external validation through status symbols, control over resources, or dominance over others. This scarcity mindset drives competitive, often destructive behaviors, creating social division and ecological harm. Resource extraction as a survival mechanism on a societal scale. Elite groups extract natural and human resources aggressively to maintain power and control. This mirrors trauma responses, hoarding and exploiting as a defense against perceived threats or scarcity. Such extraction damages ecosystems and communities, reinforcing cycles of trauma and disconnection globally. Healing the root causes, addressing trauma and fostering reconnection, both personally and collectively, reduces the compulsion for status chasing and exploitation. Healing creates space for cooperation, sustainability, and shared well-being. Understanding status and resource obsession as trauma symptoms opens paths for compassionate systemic reform and personal growth. 6. Manufactured fear, war and control. Media, politics, and economy of fear perpetuate trauma cycles. Fear is a powerful tool, and it is often deliberately manufactured to maintain control, fuel conflict, and perpetuate cycles of trauma. The role of media, news and entertainment industries frequently emphasize violence, crime, and threat to capture attention and increase profit. Sensationalized and fear-based reporting heightens public anxiety, distrust, and polarization. This constant barrage of fear primes individuals' brains for stress responses, increasing social disconnection and aggression. Politics of fear. Political leaders and institutions often exploit fear, real or fabricated, to consolidate power, justify repression, and manipulate public opinion. Fear-based rhetoric divides communities and distracts from systemic problems like inequality and environmental destruction. Policies driven by fear tend to prioritize control and punishment over healing and justice. Economic interests. The military-industrial complex profits from ongoing conflicts and insecurity. War and fear stimulate industries that benefit from crisis, perpetuating instability. This creates feedback loops where fear sustains conflict, and conflict sustains profit. Trauma cycles perpetuated. Manufactured fear maintains the social disease of trauma and disconnection, keeping societies reactive rather than healing. Breaking free requires conscious awareness of these forces and building systems rooted in truth, compassion, and connection. Broken purpose and love replaced by control. At the core of human well-being are purpose and love, the fundamental drives that connect us to ourselves and others. When trauma and disconnection strike, these vital forces fracture, often replaced by a desperate need for control. Loss of purpose. Trauma can erode a person's sense of meaning and direction, leaving emptiness and confusion. Without clear purpose, individuals may seek control externally to fill the void, often through status, power, or domination. This broken purpose fuels destructive cycles, as control becomes a surrogate for authentic fulfillment. Love substituted by control. Love requires vulnerability, trust, and connection, qualities diminished by trauma. When love is damaged or unavailable, people may resort to controlling behaviors to create a false sense of safety. Control, unlike love, isolates and fractures relationships, deepening disconnection and suffering. Reclaiming purpose and love. Healing restores purpose and love by addressing trauma's root and rebuilding connection, engaging in meaningful service, creative expression, and authentic relationships revitalizes purpose. Cultivating empathy and emotional safety renews the capacity for love. As love and purpose return, the need for control diminishes, opening the path to true well-being. This chapter illuminates how trauma twists our deepest needs, and how healing reclaims them. Part 3, The Healing Protocol, MAPS's 8 evidence-based pillars for returning to love, compassion, and sanity. Practice role weight forward / importance Mediterranean diet anti-inflammatory brain fuel medium appreciation, gratitude, joy amplifier, emotional reset low P photons, sunlight, hormonal regulation, mood lift low S sleep brain repair, emotional balance medium E environment, nature, nervous system calming, grounding medium E exercise mood, embodiment. Energy boost high, 40%. Our relationships connection, empathy, belonging high, 50%. S service, purpose, meaning, identity, coherence high, 50%. Top 3 levers, purpose, relationships, exercise, together over half of well-being. 8 evidence-based pillars for returning to love, compassion, and sanity. Our natural state is love, connection, and mental clarity. Trauma and neglect cloud this by damaging mind and body. The MAPS's protocol offers a science-backed pathway to restore health and well-being, addressing physical, emotional, and social needs. Mediterranean diet. Anti-inflammatory brain fuel nutrition plays a foundational role in healing trauma and restoring brain function. The Mediterranean diet is widely recognized as one of the healthiest dietary patterns for physical and mental health. Why the Mediterranean diet? Rich in anti-inflammatory foods like olive oil, nuts, fish, fruits, and vegetables, it helps reduce chronic inflammation linked to depression, anxiety, and cognitive decline. Supports healthy gut microbiota, which influences brain health and emotional regulation through the gut-brain axis. Provides essential omega-3 fatty acids critical for brain plasticity and function. Studies link this diet to lower rates of depression and improved cognitive performance. Practical benefits. Adopting a Mediterranean diet helps heal the body's inflammatory burden caused by stress and trauma, creating a more resilient and balanced brain, a crucial foundation for emotional healing. Appreciation, gratitude joy amplifier. Emotional reset. Appreciation and gratitude are powerful emotional practices that help reset the brain's stress responses and amplify feelings of joy and connection. Why appreciation matters. Neuroscience shows that regularly practicing gratitude activates brain areas linked to reward, empathy, and social bonding. It reduces cortisol, stress hormone, levels and increases serotonin and dopamine, the brain's natural feel-good chemicals. Appreciation shifts focus from threat and scarcity to abundance and safety, counteracting trauma-induced negativity bias. Emotional reset. Gratitude acts like an emotional reset button, helping people break cycles of rumination and despair. Increase resilience against stress. Strengthen relationships by fostering positive interactions. Practical application. Daily gratitude journaling, verbal expressions of thanks, and mindful appreciation of simple pleasures help cultivate this healing practice, enhancing overall well-being. Appreciation complements the Mediterranean diet by uplifting emotional health, essential for restoring balance and joy. Photons, sunlight hormonal regulation, mood lift. Sunlight exposure is a natural, powerful healer that regulates hormones and boosts mood, playing a vital role in trauma recovery and emotional well-being. The power of sunlight. Sunlight triggers the production of vitamin D, essential for brain health, immune function, and hormonal balance. Exposure to natural light regulates melatonin, the hormone controlling sleep cycles, improving rest and recovery. Sunlight stimulates the release of serotonin, a neurotransmitter that enhances mood and promotes feelings of calm and happiness. Research links regular sunlight exposure to lower rates of depression, anxiety, and seasonal affective disorder, SAD. Healing impacts by supporting hormonal balance and elevating mood. Sunlight helps reduce stress, regulate emotions, and enhance overall mental health, crucial for rebuilding resilience after trauma. Practical tips: aim for at least 15 to 30 minutes of daily natural sunlight, preferably in the morning. Spend time outdoors regularly, combining sunlight with fresh air and nature for maximal benefit. Sunlight works hand in hand with diet and appreciation, forming a natural triad supporting body and mind. Sleep, brain repair, emotional balance. Sleep is foundational for healing trauma, restoring brain function, and maintaining emotional stability. Why sleep matters. During sleep, the brain performs critical repair and detoxification processes, clearing metabolic waste linked to cognitive decline and mood disorders. Sleep regulates the balance of neurotransmitters and hormones essential for emotion regulation and stress resilience. Insufficient or poor quality sleep amplifies symptoms of anxiety, depression, and irritability, worsening trauma effects. Emotional balance. Consistent, restorative sleep improves memory consolidation, including emotional memories, helping process trauma safely. Impulse control and decision-making, reducing reactive or aggressive behavior. Overall mood stability, fostering compassion and patience. Practical guidelines: aim for 7-9 hours of quality sleep nightly. Maintain a consistent sleep schedule and create a calming bedtime routine. Limit exposure to screens and bright light before sleep to promote melatonin production. Sleep completes the early pillars by enabling the brain's natural healing and emotional equilibrium. Environment, nature. Nervous system calming, grounding. Spending time in natural environments is a proven way to calm the nervous system, reduce stress, and foster emotional healing. Why nature matters. Nature exposure lowers cortisol levels, decreases heart rate, and shifts the nervous system from fight or flight into rest and digest mode. Immersion in green spaces improves mood, reduces anxiety, and enhances feelings of safety and connection. The sensory experience of nature, sounds, sights, textures, grounds attention and interrupts rumination, a common trauma symptom. Nervous system benefits. Regular contact with nature helps regulate autonomic nervous system balance, reducing hyperarousal common in trauma. Improve sleep quality and emotional resilience. Foster a sense of belonging and connection to something larger than oneself. Practical application: aim for daily or frequent time outdoors in parks, forests, gardens, or near water. Practice mindful walking or simply sitting quietly, noticing natural elements. Incorporate nature indoors with plants, natural light, and organic materials when outside access is limited. Nature acts as a vital healer, nurturing the nervous system and supporting the journey back to peace and joy. Exercise, mood, embodiment, energy boost. Exercise is a powerful catalyst for healing trauma, enhancing mood, reconnecting the body and mind, and boosting energy. Why exercise matters. Physical activity releases endorphins and neurotransmitters like dopamine and serotonin, natural chemicals that elevate mood and reduce anxiety and depression. Exercise improves brain plasticity, supporting recovery from trauma-related neural damage. It reconnects the body and mind through embodiment, fostering a sense of control and safety in the physical self. Regular exercise increases energy levels, combating fatigue often associated with trauma and depression. Impact on life quality. Exercise ranks among the top 3 levers for improving life quality, accounting for around 40% of overall well-being improvements in evidence-based studies. Practical tips: aim for at least 30 minutes of moderate activity most days, including aerobic, strength, and flexibility exercises. Activities like walking, yoga, dancing, or sports combine physical benefits with social and emotional engagement. Consistency matters more than intensity. Start small and build sustainable habits. Exercise amplifies the healing effects of other pillars by energizing the body and mind for lasting transformation. Relationships, connection, empathy, belonging. Healthy relationships are the cornerstone of healing trauma and rebuilding a fulfilled life, offering connection, empathy, and a vital sense of belonging. Why relationships matter: positive social bonds stimulate the release of oxytocin, the bonding hormone which reduces stress and promotes feelings of safety and trust. Secure relationships improve emotional regulation and resilience, buffering against the negative effects of trauma. Empathy and social support are linked to longer lifespan, better mental health, and overall well-being. Impact on life quality: relationships rank as the top lever for life quality, accounting for about 50% of overall well-being in evidence-based assessments. Practical application: cultivate authentic, supportive connections with family, friends, and community. Prioritize communication, vulnerability, and active listening. Seek help when needed, and offer support to others to build reciprocal bonds. Nurturing relationships creates a healing network that sustains long-term recovery and joy. Service, purpose, meaning, identity, coherence. Finding and engaging in purposeful service reconnects us to meaning, identity, and coherence, key elements for healing and thriving. Why service matters: purposeful action activates brain regions involved in motivation, reward, and social connection. Service fosters a sense of identity beyond trauma, creating coherence in one's life story. Contributing to others cultivates empathy, gratitude, and belonging, deepening healing and joy. Studies show that having a strong sense of purpose correlates with better mental health, longer life, and resilience. Impact on life quality: service ranks alongside relationships as a top lever, contributing about 50% to overall life quality. Practical application: identify ways to serve that align with personal values and strengths. Engage in community work, creative projects, mentoring, or caregiving. Reflect regularly on how service connects to personal growth and connection. Purposeful service transforms trauma's pain into meaningful contribution, the final key to holistic healing. Part 4, The Personal Mirror, My Dad 7. From hate to understanding: personal stories bring abstract ideas to life. This chapter shares my journey with my dad, how I moved from deep hatred and judgment to a place of empathy and hope. The struggle with hate: for years, I saw my dad as a symbol of evil, someone who caused pain and disappointment. My anger felt justified and pure, a righteous response to past wounds. Discovering trauma's role: as I learned about trauma, neglect, and the ACE studies, I began to see my dad differently. He is not inherently evil but a person shaped by his own wounds and struggles. His choices and behaviors reflected unhealed trauma, disconnection, and unmet needs. Understanding this opened the door to compassion, without excusing harm. Healing together: by applying evidence-based healing practices, improving diet, relationships, purpose, and nature exposure, he is on a path to restoration. His experience highlights that healing is possible even later in life. It shows how personal and systemic trauma intertwine and can be addressed through care, not condemnation. This personal mirror illuminates the book's core thesis: no one is born evil, and with support, everyone can reclaim their innate goodness. Your journey from seeing him as evil to seeing trauma For a long time, I carried a heavy weight, a belief that my dad was evil. The pain he caused felt like a permanent scar on my soul, and my anger was a shield protecting me from further hurt. I saw him through the lens of judgment and hate, convinced that his cruelty was who he truly was. But slowly, through learning about trauma, neuroscience, and human behavior, that hardened view began to crack. I started to understand that his actions were not the product of an evil heart, but of a wounded one, a heart damaged by neglect, hardship, and unhealed pain. I realized that trauma changes the brain and the way people relate to others. It can create cycles of hurt where the harmed become harmers, sometimes unintentionally and without conscious cruelty. This truth didn't erase my pain or the need for boundaries, but it opened space for empathy and hope. Seeing my dad not as evil but as sick and struggling transformed my relationship with him and with myself. It showed me that healing is possible, for him, for me, and for anyone trapped in the cycle of trauma. This journey wasn't easy. It required confronting my own pain, challenging long-held beliefs, and embracing vulnerability. But it also brought profound peace, understanding, and a path forward rooted in love, not hate. This section grounds the reader in a deeply personal example of the book's core message, compassion and healing over condemnation. How unmet needs shaped his life and pain. At the root of much suffering lies unmet fundamental human needs, for connection, safety, purpose, and love. My dad's life reflects this truth profoundly. Early wounds and neglect from childhood onward, he faced emotional neglect and hardships that left deep scars. These unmet needs created a foundation of insecurity and disconnection. Without a stable emotional base, his ability to trust and relate to others was impaired. Lacking a sense of belonging, he sought control and status as substitutes. Trauma shaped his nervous system into a state of chronic stress, increasing reactivity and distancing. Adult struggles. As an adult, many of these unmet needs remained unresolved. His work as a chiropractor offered some sense of purpose and touch, important for connection and validation. However, his relationships were few and fragile, leaving emotional loneliness. His lifestyle, including diet and limited exercise, likely compounded physical and mental strain. These gaps perpetuated cycles of pain, defensive behavior, and isolation. The healing path. Understanding these unmet needs points the way forward, rebuilding relationships and emotional safety. Enhancing physical health through nutrition, exercise, and nature. Cultivating meaningful purpose beyond status or control. Healing is not about blame, but recognizing that everyone's pain is shaped by their unmet needs, a step toward empathy and restoration. 8 Healing possibilities. What he lacks: relationships, exercise, true purpose. Recognizing what is missing is the first step toward meaningful healing. For my dad, the key gaps are clear: relationships, exercise, and true purpose. Relationships. Emotional connection is the cornerstone of healing trauma. Building genuine, supportive relationships can restore his sense of belonging and safety. Healing fractured bonds and creating new connections offers emotional nourishment critical for growth. Exercise. Physical activity not only improves health but reconnects body and mind. Regular exercise releases mood-enhancing chemicals, reduces stress, and increases energy. Introducing sustainable movement can help regulate his nervous system and foster embodiment. True purpose. Beyond work and status, a deeper sense of purpose offers coherence and meaning. Purpose rooted in service, creativity, or contribution cultivates identity and hope. Finding activities aligned with his values can reignite motivation and joy. The path forward combining these pillars with improvements in diet, nature exposure, sleep, and appreciation creates a holistic healing framework. Though the journey is challenging, these missing pieces offer clear targets for restoration, proof that change is possible at any stage of life. How MAPSEERS could guide his recovery. The MAPSEERS protocol offers a comprehensive, evidence-based roadmap to help my dad, and others like him, reclaim health, balance, and joy. Mediterranean diet. Switching to a nutrient-rich, anti-inflammatory diet can reduce brain fog, improve mood, and support physical well-being. Increasing fish, olive oil, fruits, and vegetables helps combat chronic inflammation linked to trauma. Appreciation, gratitude. Practicing daily gratitude can reset emotional patterns, boosting positivity and resilience. This simple habit nurtures emotional balance and shifts focus away from negativity. Photons, sunlight. Regular sunlight exposure supports hormonal regulation, mood improvement, and better sleep. Outdoor time can also increase nature contact, amplifying calming effects. Sleep. Establishing healthy sleep routines repairs brain function and stabilizes emotions. Consistent 7-9 hours of restful sleep is foundational for trauma recovery. Environment, nature. Spending time in natural settings calms the nervous system and grounds attention. Nature exposure reduces stress, enhancing emotional regulation and well-being. Exercise. Introducing regular physical activity reconnects body and mind, boosts mood, and increases energy. Exercise also improves brain plasticity, aiding trauma healing. Relationships. Rebuilding connections with family, friends, and community nurtures belonging and empathy. Supportive relationships buffer stress and provide emotional nourishment. Service, purpose. Engaging in meaningful service fosters identity, coherence, and motivation. Purposeful action channels energy into positive growth and social contribution. Together, these pillars form a scaffolding for recovery, addressing mind, body, and spirit. Following MAPSEERS can transform trauma's damage into renewed strength and compassion. 9. Your healing journey. Shifting hate to compassion without excusing harm. Healing is a complex, often difficult process, especially when it involves deep wounds from loved ones. My journey with my dad taught me how to transform hate into compassion without ignoring the pain or excusing harmful behavior. Holding both truths. Acknowledging the real harm and pain caused is vital for personal boundaries and justice. At the same time, understanding that harmful actions often stem from trauma opens space for empathy. Compassion is not about condoning wrongdoing but about recognizing shared humanity and the possibility of healing. The power of compassion. Compassion softens anger's grip, reducing emotional burden and opening channels for reconciliation. It fosters patience and hope for change, motivating healing efforts rather than resentment. This shift allowed me to see my dad as a wounded person, not a monster, freeing both of us. Maintaining boundaries. 10. Compassion does not mean tolerating ongoing abuse or neglect. 11. Healthy boundaries protect well-being while allowing space for transformation. 12. Healing requires both accountability and care. Boundaries and love. True healing balances firm boundaries with unconditional love, a necessary dance to protect well-being while fostering growth. Why boundaries matter. Boundaries create safety by defining what is and isn't acceptable behavior. They protect against ongoing harm and emotional overwhelm. Clear boundaries enable honest relationships built on respect, not fear or control. Love's role. Love offers acceptance, patience, and the willingness to hold space for imperfection and growth. It nurtures connection even amid difficulty and conflict. Love motivates support and healing without enabling destructive patterns. The balance boundaries without love can feel cold, punitive, or isolating. Love without boundaries can enable harm and chaos. Together, they form a healing container where accountability and compassion coexist. This balance empowers both the giver and receiver to heal, rebuild trust, and move toward wholeness. Part V, Toward a Reconnected Humanity 10. Justice as healing. Our world doesn't need more punishment, it needs more healing. True justice doesn't come from revenge or control. It comes from understanding the roots of harm, stopping destructive behavior, and restoring people to their natural state of goodness and connection. Justice that heals. Traditional systems focus on punishment, often ignoring the trauma beneath behavior. But when we see cruelty as a symptom of illness or disconnection, justice becomes an act of compassionate repair. Healing justice means stopping harm while helping the person heal, because hurt people, but healed people help. The reconnection model. Justice systems can evolve from cages and shame to support and transformation. Schools, families, communities, and governments can be built around the idea that people are born good, and can return to goodness with care. Restorative approaches reduce recidivism, build empathy, and rebuild relationships. This new vision of justice heals both individuals and society, repairing the very fabric of humanity. Behavior control and safety. Boundaries are essential. While healing is the goal, safety comes first. No matter the source of someone's cruelty, trauma, illness, or disconnection, harmful behavior must be stopped immediately. Why behavior must be controlled. Allowing abuse, violence, or exploitation to continue damages victims further and reinforces the harm doer's broken patterns. Compassion without structure leads to chaos. Healing can only happen within safety. Justice means firmly interrupting harm while guiding the person toward healing. The role of boundaries. Boundaries are not punishments, they are acts of love that protect everyone involved. They say, I will not let you harm me or others, and I believe you can grow beyond this. This applies to parenting, relationships, justice systems, and society at large. Firm but compassionate. True healing justice uses boundaries not to destroy, but to contain and redirect. It says no to behavior, but yes to the person beneath it. We protect the innocent and the potential of the wounded when we combine firmness with care. Punishment without healing is failure. Society often responds to harm with punishment alone, but without healing, this approach fails everyone. Why punishment alone doesn't work. It may stop behavior temporarily, but it doesn't address the root cause, trauma, disconnection, or unmet needs. 83% of people released from prison in the US are arrested again within 9 years, a sign that pain was managed, not mended. Shame and isolation often deepen the harm, entrenching bitterness, fear, and reoffending. What healing adds? Healing addresses the why behind the harm: early trauma, neglect, loneliness, lack of purpose. It equips people with the tools to regulate emotions, build empathy, and reconnect. True justice isn't just stopping cycles of abuse, it's transforming them. The real failure when a system punishes but doesn't heal, it abandons its deeper duty, to restore wholeness, protect the future, and build a compassionate society. Punishment alone is not justice. Healing is the missing half. Rehabilitation and healing centers as the future. If trauma is the root of cruelty, then healing, not punishment, must be the future of justice. A new vision. Imagine a world where instead of cages, we build healing centers, safe, structured environments that stop harm immediately, stabilize and detoxify the nervous system, address unmet needs like love, purpose, and connection teach life skills, emotional literacy, and embodiment reintegrate people into society as healed contributors, not outcasts. What the research shows, programs focused on restorative justice and trauma-informed care consistently reduce reoffending more than punitive models. Norway's prison model, which centers on dignity, education, and healing, has a recidivism rate of just 20%, compared to over 75% in the US. Youth diversion programs that use therapy and mentoring instead of incarceration lower violent crime by up to 45%. Healing centers could include MAPSIA's protocols as daily practice, nutrition, sunlight, movement, sleep, etc. Nature immersion, relationship coaching, and purpose discovery, trauma therapy and spiritual support, restorative dialogue with victims where possible. The goal isn't leniency, it's lasting transformation. Rehabilitation is not a luxury. It's the only real solution. 11 Parenting and education trauma-informed, MAPSIAS-based systems for children. To build a healthier world, we must start where harm begins, in childhood. That means transforming parenting and education into prevention and healing systems, not pressure or punishment machines. Why it matters: 90% of brain development happens before age 5. Children exposed to trauma without support are more likely to develop mental illness, struggle in school, and perpetuate harm. Traditional systems often misinterpret trauma responses as bad behavior instead of cries for help. A new model, MAPSIAS for kids. Each pillar becomes a foundation for child thriving: Mediterranean diet, replacing ultra-processed cafeteria food with brain-supportive meals; appreciation, teaching gratitude and emotional expression from preschool onward; photons, sunlight, prioritizing outdoor time, natural light, and recess sleep, respecting children's sleep needs with later school start times and calmer evening routines; environment, nature, daily contact with trees, animals, gardens, learning rooted in place; exercise, movement-based learning, play, and embodiment instead of just desk time; relationships, attachment-based discipline, teacher warmth, peer connection; service, purpose, empowering kids to help, lead, and express their unique gifts early on; trauma-informed approach, recognize signs of trauma as signals, not defiance; train parents and educators in emotional regulation, attunement, and restorative discipline; focus on co-regulation before correction, and love before lectures. A MAPSIAS-based system nurtures resilient, compassionate, joy-filled children, breaking the cycle before it begins. Teaching emotional and nervous system health. If we want a compassionate, resilient society, we must teach children how to understand and regulate their emotions and nervous systems, as early as we teach math or reading. Why it's crucial: the nervous system governs fight, flight, freeze, and connection states. Children who can't regulate emotions are often mislabeled as bad when they're actually overwhelmed or dysregulated. Trauma keeps the body in survival mode, teaching regulation is the way out. What to teach: 1. Name it to tame it. Help kids identify feelings with words: I'm mad, I'm scared. 2. Safe touch and movement. Use grounding tools like breathing, stretching, walking, or weighted blankets. 3. Window of tolerance. Teach what it feels like to be okay and how to get back there. 4. Co-regulation. Show adults how to model calm, not react to chaos. 5. Rest and recovery. Teach that it's okay to pause, nap, reflect, cry, or ask for space. Integration with MAPSIAS exercise releases stuck energy from fight/flight. Sleep and sunlight regulate stress hormones. Nature calms the vagus nerve, supports grounding. Relationships offer co-regulation and safety. Gratitude and purpose build emotional strength and meaning. This is core education for a joyful society. Regulated kids become regulated adults, capable of love, patience, and peace. 12. A new vision of humanity. No one is born evil. This book rests on a single, transformative truth: no one is born evil. Not killers. Not abusers. Not addicts. Not even those we fear the most. What we are born with. Babies show natural empathy, soothing crying peers, sharing toys without being taught. Studies confirm early pro-social behavior by 6 to 12 months of age. What changes people is not original sin, it's original pain, trauma, neglect, unmet needs, and toxic environments. Evil is a misdiagnosis. What we call evil is often unhealed suffering wearing a mask of rage, control, or apathy. Every tyrant was once a crying child who needed love and didn't get it. This is not an excuse. It's a diagnosis, and with it comes the possibility of treatment, of repair. The vision: a world built not on fear and punishment, but on reconnection, care, and courage. Systems designed to catch falling souls, not crush them. Communities trained not just in justice, but in healing. We are born good. When we forget that, we lose ourselves. When we remember, we can reclaim everything. Healing is the path forward for individuals and society. If trauma breaks people, then healing must be the path that restores them, not just as individuals, but as a planet. For individuals, healing brings people back to their natural state of love, joy, and connection. Through practices like MAPSIAs, anyone can begin the journey, regardless of age, past, or pain. It's not easy. But it's possible. And it's worth it. For society, our systems must evolve from reaction to restoration, from blame to repair. Justice, education, healthcare, and parenting must treat the wound, not just the behavior. A healed society is not utopian, it's simply one that understands pain and chooses to respond with wisdom, structure, and care. The choice: we can continue the cycles of punishment, disconnection, and fear. Or we can choose healing, as a philosophy, a practice, and a way of life. Healing is the only path that leads anywhere worth going. It is how we reclaim ourselves, our families, and our future. Compassion as practical realism, not naive hope. Compassion isn't weakness. It's practical realism, the only strategy that works in the long run. What doesn't work? Punishment alone doesn't heal. Shame doesn't reform. Fear doesn't connect. These tactics might force short-term obedience, but they fail to transform the heart. Why compassion works? Compassion sees the root, not just the symptom. It interrupts generational harm, instead of recycling it. It empowers people to heal and contribute, not just survive. Backed by evidence, restorative justice reduces recidivism more than incarceration. Trauma-informed parenting lowers aggression and boosts emotional regulation. Compassion-based therapy leads to deeper and more lasting recovery than fear-based intervention. Not naive, just honest. Compassion doesn't mean ignoring danger. It means facing it bravely and wisely, by treating what causes it, not just what it looks like. The world isn't suffering from too much compassion. It's suffering from not nearly enough. Compassion is the only path to a sane, safe, and joyful future. End with left arrow above. Conclusion: you were always love beneath the pain. Evil is the name we gave to suffering we didn't understand, now we know, and we can heal. You were always love beneath the pain. Evil is the name we gave to suffering we didn't understand, now we know, and we can heal. This book has traced a single thread: no one is born evil. People are born good, and pain twists that goodness into cruelty. Healing untwists it. We've seen how childhood trauma, ACEs, unmet needs, and disconnection deform behavior. We've explored the 8 pillars of healing, MAPSIAs. We've looked at how justice, parenting, and society can shift from punishment to transformation. And we've seen, through my dad's story, and through yours, that love is not the opposite of boundaries, it's the force that makes them healing instead of hurtful. Where we go from here, we protect the innocent by stopping harm. We heal the wounded by meeting needs. We rebuild society on compassion, truth, and reconnection. You are not broken. You are not evil. You are the light that hurt tried to cover. Now we know. Now we heal. Now we begin. Glowing Star Final Review, Born Good, a joy-tastic reflection. Glowing Star Book's usefulness, 92%. This book offers a highly practical and transformative framework for understanding human cruelty and healing. The central thesis, that people are born good, and cruelty stems from trauma or social illness, provides a paradigm shift that challenges common moral assumptions and opens the door to empathy and recovery. The MAPSIA's healing pillars serve as a clear, evidence-based roadmap applicable across individual, family, and societal levels. Integrating neuroscience, ACE studies, psychology, nutrition, and social theory offers a holistic toolkit for personal and community transformation. The inclusion of a personal story grounds abstract concepts in lived reality, enhancing relatability and emotional engagement. The book is well positioned to be a resource for parents, educators, policymakers, therapists, and justice reform advocates, anyone seeking effective solutions beyond blame and punishment. Bar chart accuracy, 88%. The book's foundations rest solidly on respected scientific research. ACE studies are accurately presented as a cornerstone linking early trauma to lifelong mental and physical health outcomes. The MAPSIA's model draws from well-supported interventions, Mediterranean diet, sleep hygiene, exercise, nature exposure, etc., with strong evidence for mental health benefits. Data points like Norway's recidivism rates, 20% versus US, 75%, and 77% of elites exploiting resources are effective in illustrating systemic issues and healing potential, though some stats on elites could benefit from additional academic citation for rigor. A minor gap lies in elaborating mechanisms in some sections, e.g., how trauma rewires the brain or the biochemical effects of sunlight, where more detailed explanation or references could enhance scientific credibility. Red Heart Emotional Resonance and Impact, 95%. The book shines brightest in its heart-centered tone and hope-filled vision. It balances tough truths with deep compassion, refusing to excuse harm but offering real hope for transformation. The personal narrative about the author's dad adds authenticity and vulnerability, helping readers feel seen and understood. The consistent message of healing, not punishment, reframes justice as restoration rather than retribution, appealing powerfully to both head and heart. Hammer strengths clear, logical structure, Part IV build naturally, guiding readers from problem to solution. Integration of personal and scientific, makes complex issues accessible and relatable. Actionable healing model, MAPSIA's offers tangible levers readers can use immediately. Radical compassion, challenges stigma around evil and mental illness without sacrificing accountability. Warning sign areas for enhancement. Some statistics and claims need more sourcing or nuance, especially about elites and social disease narratives, to strengthen authority. Expanding on neuroscience details could deepen understanding for curious readers. The scope is wide, focusing more on a few key areas could sharpen impact without diluting the message. Consider addressing cultural and systemic variables more explicitly to avoid overgeneralization. Crystal ball overall joytastic rating, 91%. Born Good is a powerful and hopeful manifesto for a more compassionate world, one where trauma is treated as illness, and justice is healing. It invites readers to rethink morality, punishment, and human nature, replacing fear and hate with science, empathy, and practical solutions. The personal and scientific weave creates a compelling call to action. Healing is possible, necessary, and within reach. With some refinement and deeper sourcing, this book can be a transformational force for individuals and societies striving to reclaim the goodness beneath the pain.